Thanks for joining me. Today I'm doing something just a little bit different. My guest today is Patrick Labyorteaux, who spent 4 seasons on Little House on the Prairie as Andy Garvey. Now, he never did do an episode of the Waltons. Why not? I have no idea. He certainly should have. But because so many of you are not only fans of the Waltons, but also Little House, I thought it would be fun to talk with Patrick about what it was like doing his show and a little bit of the behind the scenes of that, along with other things about his career. I was recently a guest on his podcast, so asked him if he would come and be a guest on my show. So here he is. Please welcome Patrick. Welcome.
Hi.
I got to be a guest on your show, so now you're returning the favor and being a guest on my show.
It's really fun. Turn around is fair play.
Yeah. Well, we have so many things in common in terms of growing up in the industry, doing it from the time we were a child, working on hugely successful family shows, and then continuing on and broadening our skill set. And now here we are both hosting sort of podcasts. So,
right.
I don't know.
Apparently, we're the only two. We're the only two people doing it, so it should do well.
Yeah. Well, tell me how. I mean, I know my history of being, getting started. How did you get started?
Basically, I was kind of destined to be an actor. I'm adopted, but my biological mom and dad came out to Hollywood to be actors. And then they got together, they got pregnant. They weren't ready. So I was put up for adoption, and I was adopted by an actor. And so my mom was an actor, and my brother, who also is on Little House, played Albert on the show. He was adopted a couple of years later. And my mom would drag us around to her auditions, as moms do, like, when she had an audition, we'd go with her. And there was a show that she was doing here in Hollywood for this place called the Troopers Club, which was old vaudevillians. This is back in the early 70s, late 60s. And they had like a variety show. And to keep us busy, she put together an act for my brother and I with old vaudeville jokes. And I got to admit, I mean, I don't remember. I remember it from my point of view, but basically, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old doing vaudeville jokes, just sort of like kind of won the crowd over. So I was 3, my brother was like 2 or something, and we were just basically babies on stage. And an acting agent saw it, and they said, "Hey, can I represent them?" And so there you go. And so then it was just like I'm sure for you, like commercials at first, and then we did a thing called it was this religious program where they did a ton of episodes. But I did one of those, and like a lot of little things along the way until in 73 I got a movie, Warner Brothers, that was it was called Black Bart at the time, but it ended up being Blazing Saddles. And then that same summer, I did a movie with Lucille Ball called Mame at Warner's as well. And so it was like, back in the day, you could have, little runs of little hot streaks where you'd get other jobs based on other jobs. And so basically that's it. I mean, that's kind of how it all started, in commercials and just being part of the family business.
That's so interesting. I never knew you were adopted or your brother. How about your sister?
Yeah. Well, my sister was adopted, but that gets more complicated because I was probably like 5 or 6, and my sister was like 8, close to being 18, but not quite. This was another tragic story. So there's a couple, this baby was abandoned. This girl was abandoned at a church, and it was my mom and dad's church. And so this baby was abandoned, and she was taken in by this family that was at this church. And then they raised the girl, and then she had a brother that was not biological. And then those parents died.
Mm.
They were in a car crash. And so now she doesn't have any parents anymore. Anyways, my mom and dad took her in, and that was around when she was 17. And when she got pregnant at like 18, my mom and dad adopted her so that the baby that wasn't born would have some sort of legal chain of some sort of family. And we all lived together at this time. So Jane she's passed away. She was my sister, or is my sister, was my sister. And her daughter, Erica, my niece, is only 4 years younger. So in a lot of ways, my niece is more like my actual sibling.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like an episode of Little House or Waltons.
Or Peyton Place, or
yeah.
When
right.
your cousin is also your stepmother and your
exactly. Uncle Daddy.
Wow, well, you have amazing parents, clearly.
Yeah, they're no longer around, but they were really great.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, good for them to form the family. I always say that to people. Family is the one you pull together. It's not always your biological family. In real life,
oh, yeah.
I have biological relatives that I don't really spend time with, but your family is the one that you build, in your heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why we always say, to all of our fans, we're like, I wish I was part of the Waltons. It's like, you're part of the extended family. And as long as you love the show, support the show, the more the merrier.
I always warn them. I say, no, there'll be a pestilence. There'll be a fire. Someone will die. Stay away from the Ingalls. They're bad luck.
Yeah, we were a little luckier than that. I mean, we lost some cast members in real life, but,
right.
We didn't kill them all. Oh, aside from my husband on the show, who asked for a pay raise and they killed him off. That's his story, not mine. That's what he said.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Funny things when you start blending those two worlds of the work, the business side of things, and the creative side. And sometimes those funky storylines are when the two aren't going the same direction.
Right, exactly. And we talked about this before, but it's true with Little House. I don't know how many for you, but when you have kids on a show, and especially a lot of kids like Waltons or Little House, you're going to have their parents there, mom or dad, one parent, a guardian. Mm-hmm. So at the minimum, you're going to have a kid and a parent on set. So that's a lot of family just hanging around to begin with, just sort of like family dynamics. On Little House, we had a lot of siblings, like mm-hmm. Melissa and Jonathan, the twins, my brother and I. And then for the extras in the school and stuff, we had the cruise kids. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of people that were all related. So when you say, the set was like a family, it literally was a family. And Michael had his kids there. So it was sort of like everybody had somebody there.
We did the same thing when we had group scenes in the schoolhouse. Some of our siblings, the children on the show had their siblings who would come and be extras. And I think Earl Hamner's son and daughter a number of times came to be extras, and then we'd have crew members and extended. So it was family. It's like family. Bring your kids to work today.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like a giant Olive Garden.
Yeah. We have, as I've been going through and doing a lot of this, I keep coming across people who did episodes or multiple episodes of both the Waltons and Little House. I can't believe you never did an episode of the Waltons. What were you sworn off of? Of it? How could that not have happened?
It's a good question. Some things there were just shows that I never got a job on. I don't actually remember reading for Waltons, but it was around at that time. I remember it was, what was it? I wanted to do a Fantasy Island. I never got to do one of those. I mean, I
didn't either. Yeah. We both did Love Boat.
Right. right? But yeah, like you say, I knew a lot of people who were on the Waltons. I mean, I just talked to Todd Bridges. He was on both.
Mhm.
Charlotte Stewart was on both. A friend of mine, Sissy Wellman, was on your show for a long while.
Right.
Just it was all
Victor
around.
French.
Everyone was around. Yeah.
Even Patricia Neal, who did our pilot as the mother, as Olivia Walton in The Homecoming, she did an episode.
That's right. Yeah. I remember that because I remember watching The Homecoming, and then when it came to and then Michael Leonard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, on that line, you mentioned Blazing Saddles, the movie.
Yes.
Cleavon Little was our minister in The Homecoming. He was Hawthorne Dooley, who had fabulous scenes and is just so funny, so fabulous. And then he did an episode of the series as well as a different character, as a boxer who was also a minister and was boxing to try and raise enough money to support and build his church and stuff. And
it's so funny. We had the same storyline on the Little House with Moses Gunn playing an older boxer.
Interesting.
No, I love Cleavon Little. I was a big fan of Temperatures Rising, which was a sitcom he was on right before he did Blazing Saddles. And I was, it's directed by Mel Brooks, starring, Gene,
right. Willy Wonka.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I keep hearing Gene Hackman in my head. Gene Wilder. Thank you. Yeah, Laurel Ingalls, Gene Wilder. But it was Cleavon Little who I was like fascinated with. My scenes were with him and the town. I had a scene in the church scene. I had a scene in the town. And one of the fun scenes I did with Cleavon Little was when he's doing his first walkthrough of the town. A bunch of other kids are beating me up, and he breaks up the fight, and everyone goes, and he shoos them all away, and he goes, "You okay?" And I go, "Yeah, we're just playing." And he goes, "What kind of game are you playing?" And I said, "We're playing Welcome the New Sheriff," which I thought was a pretty funny joke. But yeah, it was obviously I was there for a month. Like, it takes forever to shoot something. I shot 3 scenes. I was in all the town stuff. And then just look, it's a killer's row of comedy. I'm a maybe 6-7-year-old kid. And it was just so much fun. But I would love to see the footage because they cut it all out. But, never seen it. I just remember it. Maybe that's for the better. Maybe I sucked.
Sometimes I recently, within the last few months, went back and rewatched an early episode of something I did, and that my memories were, I thought I did really good work in that. And I watched the episode and went, oh no. Hello, anybody home? Wake up, a little more animation of any sort would be good.
Right.
Can we say bland? Oh, thank goodness I was cast as a character with a lot of attitude on the Waltons, because it made me kind of have to really show up and do something.
Well, and you also understand and appreciate good editors where they don't linger on something if there's nothing there.
Yeah. You also mentioned, which I wanted to ask you about, being a musical theater person. When I saw that you were in Mame, I was like, oh, wow, how fun was that? Or not?
No, it was amazing because, again, it was the same summer that I did Blazing Saddles and Mame, both at Warner Brothers. So I brought my bike to the set. I had to the studio. And so it was like a really great summer. And again, for Mame, it was about a month on set with Lucy. And it was only like I had one scene inside and then we had one scene at the airport. But back then, those big movies that were shot, like it just took forever. And all of my scenes were with Lucy because I played her grandnephew, Peter. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I was on set, Lucy was holding my hand. Mm-hmm. And I knew who Lucille Ball was because I was watching I Love Lucy. You'd see I Love Lucy on Channel 11 out here, black and white reruns. But what I didn't figure was that she wasn't, I thought she was on the days that we weren't together, that she was doing that show And then, and then the days that we were together, we were doing a movie. So I would ask her about the episodes, like from the ones that I had just watched, which for her was like 30 years before. And she would answer every one of my silly kid questions, which I thought was really cute, or, in retrospect. She gave me this Mickey Mouse watch, which I don't have anymore. I would wish I knew what happened to it, for a Christmas gift. It said, to my Patrick, love Lucy, which is like, God, I would die to have that now. But what was really funny was that she was just a real protective, like at that time, grandma figure for me. And I had a great time. Every adult was afraid of her, which I never could figure out then. Now I get it. But I don't ever remember her being crazy. I've been around actors that were kind of jerks, right? I've seen it. She was never a jerk, but what she was particular because she kind of has done it. She invented a form of the sitcom. She's a legend. And so she didn't really have time for people that couldn't follow quickly. And it was like, that's what I think people were afraid of. But the way she treated me was amazing. Just a really sweet lady. And something that I wouldn't understand what I was getting until later when I realized who she actually was.
Yeah. That's such a part of being a child actor is you work with people and you have no idea who they are. And that's probably a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. I spoke with Bruce Davison is someone else who did an episode of the Waltons, and I've been.
He played my dad. Yeah.
Yeah, and I talked to him about that experience when I had him on as a guest, and he had an interesting route into that because he was friends with Desi Jr.
Oh, cool!
And hung with that little group of guys who were buddies, and so he told an interesting story about one of the scenes that had some sort of it was a more intense emotional scene when he's something with her and he said that she kind of they did a take that was like okay or whatever they were going to print it or something and then she kind of like challenged him on that like you got, is that all you got? That's nice. That's
right.
That's
right.
the nice one. That's the safe one. That's the not really committed one. And, and that they did another one and whatever it was he did subsequently, she was kind of like, yes. So he said, yes, the intimidation factor of, because he kind of knew her initially just as Desi's mom, of course, knowing who she was. But that it was a bit daunting, and having this. Okay, here we go. But you certainly hear those stories of the people those legends that did sort of we follow in their footsteps because of the fabulous work they did and everything the industry learned from them.
Well, also, we literally, our group, our age group of actors, those kid actors of the 70s, you would be working with actors in their 80s who were from the silent era. I talked to Jill Whalen, who worked with, Ginger Rogers and not Clara Bow, but like some ridiculous Lillian Gish. She worked with Lillian Gish. And it's like because of the time overlapping. So the 70s, you could be working with someone in their 70s and they were born at the turn of the century and were like 8, 9, 10, whatever. And we get to work with these people. I don't know that certainly like a Love Boat show. There's nothing like that really anymore. There's 1,000 shows everywhere, but there's nothing like, that type of crisscrossing of generational actors. So we benefited from that for sure.
But that must have been amazing for Jill and the rest of that cast to have that parade of stars come through week after week after week.
I did the math. They had over 1,000 guest stars, of which we were both guest stars. But like I would call myself, I would never call you, but low rent for me. I'm like a low rent guest star. It's like a kid from a new show.
I was
but it's like,
to get a chance.
I'm not Mae West. I'm not Ginger Rogers.
We did, Beulah Bondi did 2 episodes of the Waltons. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Beulah, but she was Jimmy Stewart's mom in It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh.
And she was in, from that, so from that era, a series of shows. And she was the second episode that she did was the very last show she did before she passed away. She won an Emmy for the episode. But such a pro. And we had the director who has been a guest of mine, Ralph Sinensky, who did a lot of directing for television. And he was the one that, suggested Beulah as an option for the episode, and, didn't know her, but and he talked about her. And just on the set, she had to be late 80s, early 90s or whatever, tiny little thing, about 4 foot nothing, and, but so sharp. I never once saw her make a mistake in speech and nothing. She was there. And Ralph said at one point when they were sitting, lighting was going on and they were sitting aside, and she was not one to chit chat and kibitz, she just stayed centered and grounded in the work all the time, and that they sat there watching all of us kids just kind of horsing around while they're lighting and waiting and stuff. And, it was kind of like they looked at each other, and she's like, something about, it's not like it used to be,
Right. Yeah, no, it's not. It's that weird, like I say, that overlapping. I was on a plane going to New York, and this is in the 70s, and they had just come out with the TVs in the back of the 70s or 80s. And so the TVs were just in the back of the chairs, and I was fiddling with mine, and I was sitting next to this lady who was really old. It's not a celebrity, just this older lady. And, I go, man, I can remember, I've never seen these. She goes, I remember when we didn't have these. And I'm like, yeah, me too. And she goes, no, planes. It's like, it's that understanding of like how different everything has become. And again, like I said, there's that weird transition in the 70s where there's so much that happened, right? We got the airplane in the 20s, and we're on the moon in the 60s. And now we've got internet, and it's sort of like so much has happened. We're on digital. We don't shoot with film anymore. It's just strange. Yeah. There was a weird thing that happened. We shot Little House on film. We shot with the Panavision cameras. I'm sure you guys did too. And it's a long, involved story, but I found out when I was doing the TV show Jag in the 90s, that the camera body, the body that was shooting us, not the magazine with the film in it, but the actual body that you connected everything to, was literally the same body, like serial number the same as the one that shot Little House. And so it's like there's this continuity in this town that I think we all are seeing kind of just sort of melt away. It's still here, but it's just sort of like for so long, from the 30s and 40s on, it was literally the same building, and the same walls, the same everything. And it was because it's what we do here is it's like we're a machine that makes movies. And so different stages, 1,000 different shows are shot on it. I'm sure you were at Warner's. Yeah. So it was like, I'm sure that how many Cagney movies were shot on the stages you guys worked on? You don't know.
I want to thank Patrick for joining me for our conversation today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. And I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons, more of your questions in an Ask Judy, and more of my conversation with Patrick. Thanks for watching.